cosmic dreams. When life unravels, it isn't failure, it's spiritual alignment sharpening your vibration and frequency so the quantum field can finally respond.
This isn't hustle, it's inner stillness, coherence, and courageous surrender. If you can trust the process, what looks like loss becomes emotional healing, and what felt like delay becomes momentum. Tonight, we explore how true manifestation happens when your signal steadies, your nervous system calms, and your choices match who you're becoming, because the field mirrors your being, not your words.
A life can fall apart the way a star collapses, not to die but to ignite into a supernova. What you call ruin may be the flashpoint of a brighter geometry assembling itself in silence. The walls that crack are not the end of the house, but the release of pressure from rooms too small for who you are now. What if the tremor you fear is simply the core of your being reaching critical heat? What if the smoke is not failure, but the nebula that will seed new constellations of meaning? I have seen plans dissolve like ice on a dark sea and later return as rivers, carving a new continent. I have watched friendships drift like orphan satellites, only to reveal the gravity that truly holds. I have felt the calendar empty itself like a night sky, and in the vacancy, unfamiliar stars appeared. This is not a verdict against you. This is a preparation chamber where the old scaffolding is stripped so the span can hold. Chaos is not the opposite of order, but the mother of a better order that remembers how to breathe. Delay is not a locked door, but the corridor where your pulse learns the rhythm of its next life. Loss is not a subtraction, but a rearrangement of mass that frees the light trapped inside it. The identity slipping from your shoulders is a cloak woven for a climate you no longer inhabit. Let it slide, the way planets relinquish unstable orbits to find the path of least resistance. Listen to the creak of your former beliefs as tectonic plates learning a more honest fit. You are not misaligned.
You are in ignition.
The ache you feel is the heat of compression that precedes luminosity. The confusion you fear is the unlearning of maps that kept you walking in safe circles. Stillness is not weakness, but the vacuum that allows the star to gather itself without interruption. If today hurts and you're just trying to breathe again, hit like and subscribe. Let this community remind you you're not alone in the dark. Control once protected you the way a shell detects a soft creature in storm water. Now the shell is heavy, and the tide is turning, and the creature needs to grow legs. Trust is the first limb that forms in the dark. Breath is the second limb that remembers how to move the ocean through your chest. Do not rush this. The universe whispers from the furnace, where your next name is being forged. Do not decorate rubble to look like a home when your true house is rising over the ridge. Ask different questions in the smoke. Ask whether the collapse is pointing to a stronger architecture hidden beneath the ash. Ask whether the people leaving are comets completing an orbit so your sky can quiet. Ask whether the silence is an airlock teaching you how to breathe beyond atmosphere. There are micro stories unfolding in the dust that will one day read like prophecy. A job falls away, and the hours widen, and in the wide hours, a forgotten practice wakes. A key relationship ends, and your voice, which learned to whisper, remembers its original volume. A sudden move uproots you, and the roots do not die. They branch into deeper aquifers. These are not punishments. These are calibrations, tuning your instrument to the pitch of a future that needs your exact note. The field around you is listening for coherence, the way a night listens for the first bird. When your trying softens into hearing, the first bird sings, and direction emerges from tone. You do not have to perform bravery to qualify for dawn. You only have to stay long enough in the dark to notice it is full of instructions. The universe does not test your worth. It tests your container to make sure it can hold light without cracking. Every crack that appears now is a mercy revealing where reinforcement is kind. Every delay that stretches now is a kindness teaching your nervous system to carry voltage. Every goodbye that hurts now is a gate through which a truer companionship can recognize you. Stand where you are and feel the floor tilt without sprinting for the nearest railing. Name the tilt preparation, and your balance will learn new mathematics. Name the smoke recalibration, and your lungs will remember the breath beneath the burn. Name the silence orchestration, and you will hear the hidden metronome of your life align. When the first bright shard of yourself returns, you will recognize it not by its volume, but by its peace. When the first path reappears, it will not demand you chase it. It will will invite you to match its pace. When the first door opens, you will step through not to escape the fire but to carry its light. Well, this is how a supernova writes a morning into the fabric of a life. This is how collapse becomes a compass. This is how the cosmos begins inside a room that seemed too small on a night that seemed too late, in a heart that finally stopped pretending it was not a star. There is a bridge between your inner field and the outer cosmos, and you cross it every time your feeling becomes a frequency. What you call a mood is a broadcast, a low hum that travels like the cosmic microwave background through the corridors of your life. When your emotional signature steadies, it resembles that ancient afterglow, faint yet everywhere, mapping a new universe of choices. Coherence is not loud. It is consistent, like radiation that does not shout, but persists until reality arranges itself around it. Your thoughts are particles, your feelings are waves, and your being is the field where the two become one song. Every clear intention is a photon fired from the heart, and its path bends not because the world is cruel, but because gravity is precise. The gravity here is your trust, invisible yet curving the space of circumstance toward outcomes that match your tone. When you shift inside, planets shift outside, not as metaphor only, but as a lawful echo of resonance seeking a home. Recalibration feels like a wobble because orbits change with micro nudges long before a new path looks stable. This is why the day tilts strangely after a quiet decision, as if your calendar learned a new constellation overnight. The mind protests because it prefers straight lines, while the universe travels in elegant ellipses toward the same destination. Surrender is not drifting. It is allowing a more intelligent curvature to carry you where force could never keep you. The void within you is not a blank. It is a cradle like the deep interstellar dark where stars quietly take their first breath. Emptiness terrifies the ego because it cannot decorate it, yet the soul recognizes it as fertile darkness. In that darkness, your scattered data points become a pattern, and the pattern begins to replicate across scales. Life is fractal, which means the way you treat a morning resembles the way you treat a decade. A single breath of coherence scales outward like a spiral galaxy, repeating form without repeating stagnation. If you wish to see your future, study the symmetry of your small rituals, for they are the atoms of your destiny. The quantum does not argue with the cosmic because they share a blueprint of relationship and rhythm. At the smallest scale, uncertainty is a gift that keeps possibility alive, and at the largest scale, it becomes becomes the sky of your options. Collapsing a probability is not unlike naming a star. For once you call it yours, navigation changes. Intention is a lens, attention is a mirror, and together they focus light into shape. When your lens is smudged with fear, the image blurs, and you assume the world is indistinct. Clean the lens with breath, stillness, and the simple courage to wait, and form will reveal itself where fog once ruled. Planets do not panic when their path is perturbed. They trade momentum with the new gravity until harmony returns. You are learning that trade, the sacred exchange where an old allegiance loosens so a truer orbit can claim you. The field listens for steadiness more than volume, which is why whispered certainty outworks shouted doubt. A mantra repeated from scarcity is noise, but a quiet yes from alignment is architecture. When you stop forcing, the wave function of your life narrows itself into the line that feels like relief. Relief is not laziness. It is the signature of a path that matches your design. From the outside, this looks like luck, but inside, it feels like finally breathing the air you were built to breathe. Think of your nervous system as an observatory tuned to faint signals from your future. If the instruments shake from urgency, they record ghosts and call them facts. If the instruments settle into stillness, the same sky reveals coordinates you could not see in motion. This is the craft of coherence, the art of choosing a vibration first and then moving as if it were already true. Move gently, and your steps will leave interference patterns of permission wherever you walk.
Those patterns call resources the way star nurseries call dust, by singing heat into it.
What gathers around you is not bribed by effort, but invited by compatibility. Compatibility increases as self-contradiction decreases, and you become less weather and more climate. Being climate means you do not chase forecasts. You establish seasons. In your season of alignment, coincidences huddle like migrating birds, deciding your shoulder is safe. Signals grow cleaner because you stopped transmitting apology between every wish. Desire without apology is not greed. It is clarity, and clarity frees the field from guessing. When the field stops guessing, it can deliver with elegance instead of drama. Drama fades because you no longer need explosions to notice change. You begin to feel the micro shifts like tectonics under grass, subtle yet continental in consequence. You become a traveler who trusts the curve, a cartographer of silence, drawing maps from frequencies instead of fear. When the new orbit stabilizes, you will not celebrate with noise, but with the deep recognition that nothing essential ever left. It was always here, waiting in the cradle of your own void, asking only for the coherence to be born.
The in-between arrives like a silent airlock. A click, you feel more than here, and suddenly gravity forgets your name.
You float in a chamber between timelines, tether cut, horizon unstitched, every movement amplified by the hush. What used to anchor you refuses to answer, and what will one day welcome you has not learned your shape. It is not punishment to drift. It is orientation by other means. Astronauts are trained for this, but souls learn it mid-orbit, improvising new limbs in the dark. Your old identity unhooks like a capsule releasing its spent stage, still warm, still beloved, and falling away with dignity. You reach to catch it, and your hands close on light, because grasping cannot hold what was never meant to return. The mind panics because it equates motion with progress and stillness with failure. Yet the void speaks a language older than speed, a grammar of currents that travel without collision. Here, every gesture becomes instruction, every breath becomes thruster, every thought tilts the cabin a degree. You discover that control is a habit, not a law, and guidance is a law, not a rumor. The in-between is not empty, it glows with uncommitted possibilities, like the darkness between stars that makes constellations possible. Discomfort is not a flaw in the process. It is the heat by which the new alloy is forged. Loneliness enters like a radio frequency you did not request, a faint static that asks whether you will tune or flee. If you listen closely, the static resolves into a chorus of far suns, and you realize isolation is a misread signal of translation in progress. You grieve for versions of you that will not make the journey, and grief is the ceremony that sends them home. You are not abandoning them, you are graduating them, and they bow as they go. Between who you were and who you will become, there is a narrow strait where language fractures and intuition becomes compass. You learn to steer by feeling, to rotate until the docking lights line up, green to green, ready to meet your next self. The silence here is not absence but structure, like rests in a score without which music would be noise. You discover the exact weight of a single yes, spoken without apology. You discover the power of a single no that protects the oxygen in your cabin. once soothed you now scratches. What once scratched you now sings. And your senses recatalog the world. Habits shed their costumes and reveal whether they are guardians or thieves. Some ask to come along, promising to shrink themselves to fit the new craft. You thank them and refuse because contraction is not the price of belonging in a larger sky. Loss stands beside you like a quiet instructor, pointing to the window where a new constellation arranges itself bead by bead. Creation stands beside you like a patient engineer, checking seals, tightening bolts, smiling at your stubborn breath. The old maps curl at the edges, and you fold them with reverence because they carried you across oceans you will never have to cross again. Now you draw in the air with your finger, and the air remembers, tracing faint lines that the future will darken into roads. Fear returns in waves, not to drown you, but to measure how steadily you float. Each wave passes through when you stop naming it as weather and start naming yourself as vessel. You practice the art of micro movements, the sacred millimeter of attitude adjustment that changes everything downstream. You choose to rest before you are exhausted, and the void rewards this with coordinates you could not see in strain. You learn the difference between the solitude that starves and the solitude that feeds. One contracts your chest into a fist. The other opens it like a door to a warm observatory. You realize the in-between houses both, and your attention decides which room you occupy. Messages arrive without paper or ink. Their seal a surge of peace that arrives unannounced. You do not argue with peace anymore because it has proved itself as accurate navigation. Some nights the suit feels too large, as if the future you ordered came a size up. You resist the urge to return it and instead grow into it, bone by breath by brave. You forgive the tempo of your becoming, and forgiveness restores power faster than urgency ever did. You practice anchoring without hooks, stability without anchors, trust without guarantees. This is the musculature of orbit, the quiet strength that makes rendezvous possible. You start hearing your name spoken from ahead rather than behind, and its sound is a corridor you are ready to walk. The void does not applaud, it confirms, and confirmation arrives as coherence that needs no witness. When the new identity approaches, it does not knock loudly, it aligns, and alignment feels like a room that already knows your heartbeat. You drift into it, not as a rescue, but as a decision that has been choosing you for years. The air changes first, then the light, then the gravity, then the language you use to love yourself. You realize that the in-between never asked you to be impressive, only precise. It never asked you to be fearless, only honest about your fear. It never asked you to be quick, only true at the speed of truth. Floating becomes flying the moment you trust the silence to carry you. Orbit becomes home the moment you accept that arrival is an inside event. And when the dock finally opens and the soft click says welcome, you will understand that nothing you needed was missing in the void. It was waiting for you to become fluent in its quiet so it could speak your next life into form. Manifestation is not a staircase you climb, but a tone you hold until the room changes shape around it. It is resonance before result, coherence before coincidence, signal before storyline. When you tune your being to a clear note, reality does not obey you, it agrees with you. Agreement arrives as pathways that feel inevitable rather than impressive. You stop pushing and start pulsing, and the pulse teaches the world how to meet you. Imagine a pulsar, a star that has learned to speak in light with astonishing regularity. Its beam is not louder than other stars. It is steadier, and steadiness turns distance into reach. If you feel lost between endings and beginnings, comment, "I choose to trust," and save this video for the moments your faith shakes. Your frequency does the same, cutting through fog not by force but by fidelity to itself. The more consistent your inner broadcast, the less drama the field requires to find you. Drama is a substitute for clarity, a flare fired when the lighthouse goes dim. When the lighthouse returns, ships stop crashing and simply dock. What falls away during this process is not treasure, but turbulence. Old habits that once made you visible to the wrong storms dissolve like mist in noon heat. This feels like loss until you notice how quiet the harbor becomes. Cosmic dust looks like ruin from up close, but it is the raw material of stars. Your shed identities, your spent beliefs, your expired rituals are the dust of a new luminosity. They collapse under gravity, your gravity, so a core can ignite without wobble. You do not need to rescue the dust. You need to let it gather where the fire demands fuel. This is not austerity, it is architecture, the honest honest reallocation of matter to meaning. Alignment is a tactile phenomenon, a felt click that arrives before evidence and explains it afterward. It lives in the body as ease, in the mind as clarity, in the breath as room. When you are aligned, decisions shrink from dilemmas into preferences, and preferences into obvious steps. Effort does not vanish, it changes texture, becoming friction that polishes rather than burns. You work, but the work feels like wind behind rather than stone ahead. Chasing is replaced by inviting. An invitation is an art of presence more than performance. Presence is the frequency of already, the subtle assurance that lets timelines fold toward you. The field does not pay attention to your speeches. It calibrates to your nervous system. If your body broadcasts emergency, the field routes resources to maintain the alarm. If your body broadcasts sufficiency, the field routes resources to expand the surplus. This is why stillness is not decorative but instrumental, the metronome that keeps your signal clean. Clean signals require honest boundaries, because leakage is the enemy of coherence. You stop apologizing for saying no where your light flickers. You stop bargaining with spaces that only recognize you when you are anxious. You let silence answer emails that your soul has already declined. As the leakage seals, your beam tightens like a column of water rising from a fountainhead. Opportunities begin to pattern around you in rings of relevance. The irrelevant stops insisting because you no longer feed it with attention. Attention is currency in a universe of mirrors, and you have learned to spend it like a sovereign. Sovereignty is not isolation, it is authorship, the quiet claim that your inner climate sets the forecast.
From that climate, synchronicities land with the naturalness of rain in a rainforest.
You stop calling them miracles and start calling them maintenance. What once required rituals now responds to rhythm, and rhythm is the choreography of trust. Trust moves like gravity, unseen but precise, curving outcomes into orbits that last. You feel the arc underneath your days, and the arc feels friendly, as if it knows your real name. Plans return, but now they are sketches, flexible enough to let the river choose the smoother bank. You set intentions the way navigators set headings, aware of winds, grateful for currents, resistance appears, you read it as navigational data, not a moral indictment. Sometimes the data says wait, and waiting becomes a form of intelligent movement. Sometimes the data says turn, and turning becomes an act of fidelity to the original tone. The more you honor the data, the less you dramatize the weather. Storms still come, but you no longer confuse thunder with prophecy. You hold your note inside the thunder until the sky remembers it. And the sky does remember because the cosmos prizes coherence the way music prizes key. What belongs to your frequency is not lured, it is located, the way a signal finds its receiver across space. What does not belong fades without litigation, like a transmission that cannot tune to your band. There is relief here, an exhale that travels all the way to the soles of your feet. Relief is the first miracle because it proves you can carry your life without bracing. From relief comes radiance, not theatrical, but steady, the glow of a system that wastes no light. From radiance comes reach, not hustle but horizon, extending because you do. And from reach comes reciprocity, the quiet joy of a world that answers you the way you answer yourself. This is manifestation as the cosmos intended it, not a conquest of matter, but a marriage of tone and time. You did not force it. You remembered it. You did not chase it. You became a place where it naturally lands and lasts. Trust is the invisible architecture that holds a universe together when sight cannot. It is the gravity of the soul, unseen yet precise, curving outcomes into orbits that last. Where control strains, trust conducts, turning scattered noise into a single clear tone. You do not earn trust by proof hunting. You grow it by breathing where evidence has not arrived. Stillness is not a pause in progress. It is the chamber where coherence crystallizes. When your nervous system exudes safety, your field stops defending and starts composing. Safety is not the absence of threat, but the presence of inner permission. In permission, your desire stops performing and begins resonating. Abraham Hicks calls this the receiving mode, and receiving is a posture more than a plan. Neville Goddard named the Sabbath the rest between assumption and appearance, and rest is a skill. Joe Dispenza teaches that the field mirrors state, and mind state is the substrate of every decision. These teachings converge on one law, that the universe does not obey your words. It harmonizes with your being. Control is a clenched fist around fog. Effort without trust squeezes harder and holds nothing. Trust is an open palm under rain, effortless without apathy, devoted without demand. To trust is not to abdicate choice. It is to choose from a frequency that refuses panic. Panic broadcasts emergency, and the field rallies to sustain the siren. Calm broadcasts sufficiency, and the field organizes to extend the surplus. You become a sanctuary for your own signal, and sanctuary changes how reality enters you. Practice begins in the body, because the body is the console of your broadcast. Inhale slowly, as if drawing starlight through the crown, and let the light widen behind your ribs. Exhale as if releasing a costume you outgrew, and hear it fall to the floor without regret. On the inhale, repeat in the mind, I am safe to receive, and mean it enough to feel your shoulders drop. On the exhale, whisper, I release the timeline, and mean it enough to soften your jaw. This is not a performance for the cosmos. It is a recalibration of your instrument. A single minute of coherent breath can retune an hour, and an hour can retune a day.
Trust scales like that, fractal and faithful. Small practices shaping vast weather.
Set 3 gentle boundaries and feel the leak in your energy stop pretending it was love. Say one honest no, and notice how quickly life returns what you thought you had to chase. Place your attention on what feels like relief rather than on what screams for rescue. Relief is a compass pointing to the path with least internal friction. Least friction is not laziness, it is elegance. The shortest line through a cooperative universe. Trust advocates for elegance, even when drama begs for your applause. You will disappoint the part of you that equates suffering with worthiness. You will soothe the part of you that remembers joy as original evidence. Let quiet victories count, because the field counts them. Notice the mornings that feel unhurried, and call that prosperity training. Notice the conversations where you do not explain yourself, and call that wealth. Notice the decisions that arrive as peace, and call that guidance fully funded. Your metrics change under trust, and new metrics change what multiplies. Rituals remain, but they soften into rhythm, and rhythm is easier to keep than rules. Rules fracture under pressure. Rhythm flexes and returns to time. Trust makes you rhythmic, which makes you dependable, which makes you magnetic. Magnetism is not conquest. It is compatibility made obvious. The more you trust, the less you audition, and the less you audition, the more the right stages find you. The cosmos favors coherence, the way music favors key, and trust is the key's signature. When discord appears, you retune rather than retaliate. Retuning is not retreat, it is mastery, the humility to adjust, and the courage to continue. If doubt rises, give it a chair and a glass of water and ask what it is protecting. Doubt often guards an old devotion, and gratitude is the ceremony that releases it from duty. Then return to the breath, not because breath is magic, but because breath is measurable. Trust that can be felt, can be built, and what can be built can be sustained. Sustained trust becomes climate, and climate outlives weather. Climates grow forests, and forests change air, and air changes song. Your song steadies, your pulse quiets, your days begin to rhyme with your nights. You realize trust was never an attitude toward the future, but a covenant with the present. Keep that covenant in small ways, and the universe will keep it with you in great ones. And when the next threshold asks for your answer, you will not shout yes, you will breathe it. The door will open because coherence is a master key, and you will walk through carrying only what can thrive under starlight. Arrival is not a trumpet blast, but a soft click of inevitability, the sound a door makes when both sides agree. You do not step into a prize. You step into proportions that finally match your inner architecture. What looked like exile reveals itself as positioning, the long arc that curved you into a truer orbit. Planets do not apologize for new ellipses. They honor the gravity that proved most faithful. So do you, bowing to the invisible mathematics that brought you here without spectacle. This is not a test graded by a distant examiner. It is a calibration confirmed by how easily you breathe. You feel it first as space in the ribcage, then as a horizon that stops running from you. The old costumes hang on their pegs like retired constellations. Beautiful, unnecessary, complete. tasks that once won rooms now dim in your hands because authenticity has made them redundant. Habits that fed on friction fall quiet, and in the quiet your true metabolism of meaning returns. You are not lighter because life removed weight. You are lighter because you stopped carrying what was never yours. Readiness was never about stamina. It was about coherence, and coherence is present. The nervous system that used to flinch at blessings now holds them without trembling. The mind that used to outsource safety to the future now locates it in the next breath. The heart that used to bargain with timing now keeps time like a patient clock. You are upgraded not by additions but by fidelity. The refusal to abandon your tone when thunder visits. The field responds to this fidelity the way a sea answers the moon, not with argument, but with tide. Resources arrive like returning birds that always knew your latitude. Allies appear speaking a language your cells remember. Opportunities align without needing your applause to stay. You do not chase, you correspond. And correspondence is a cleaner physics than pursuit. Precision replaces performance. Presence replaces persuasion. Peace replaces proof. You begin to notice how often life says yes where you once only heard static. You begin to notice how little noise is required to move a mountain when the mountain trusts your hands. Your days gain the texture of inevitability without the arrogance of certainty. You wakes without rehearsing disaster because your body no longer mistakes calm for danger. You work without bracing because effort has become an instrument rather than a shield. You love without shrinking because love no longer requires you to disappear to be kept. This is the reconfiguration, not an act of magic, but of mechanics, the clean fit of signal and system. You are being stewarded, not spared, shaped, not scolded, set, not stalled. What left could not carry the voltage, and what remains conducts it with grace. You bless the exits because they cleared the runway, and you bless the arrivals because they know how to land. Gratitude ceases to be a practice and becomes your native climate. From this climate, your decisions shorten, your boundaries soften into clarity, your vision stops squinting. You do not fear the next storm because storms now irrigate rather than erode. You do not beg for signs because your body has become because the room that fits you was built from your frequency. If you're carrying quiet pain no one sees, share this with someone who needs it and stay with us. Here we turn pain into alignment. When you speak, the sentence sits exactly where it belongs in time. When you listen, silence informs you faster than noise ever did. When you rest, nothing valuable leaves. And when you move, nothing essential is left behind. Call this mastery if you like, but it feels more like finally being native to your own sky. No committee voted you worthy. The cosmos simply mirrored your steadiness. No ritual forced fate. Your rhythm invited it to reveal its choreography. You will still be human, and the wind will still change, but your keel is true, and your stars are faithful. If doubt visits, it finds a chair, a meal, and no authority, and it departs on its own feet. If delay returns, it arrives as a friend with precise questions, rather than a jailer with keys you cannot see. You hold the life you asked for without collapsing, because you trained for weight, not applause. You carry light like a craft carries fire, contained, generous, endlessly transmissible. This is your ascension without spectacle, your orbit without wobble, your yes without strain. You are not dust lost in the void. You are a galaxy learning its own longitude. You are not being examined. You are being expressed. You are not surviving your timeline. You are composing it in the register that suits your voice. The universe does not measure you, it reflects you. And today the mirror is clean. Walk forward with the certainty of tides and the humility of light. Let what loves your frequency find you without chase. Let what cannot breathe at your altitude descend without blame. Let the season you prepared for unfold with the quiet authority of dawn. And when the horizon brightens, as horizons do, receive it not as a miracle, but as maintenance for a star that finally knows how to shine. When life unravels, it isn't failure, it's spiritual alignment sharpening your vibration and frequency so the quantum field can finally respond.
This isn't hustle, it's inner stillness, coherence, and courageous surrender. If you can trust the process, what looks like loss becomes emotional healing, and what felt like delay becomes momentum. Tonight, we explore how true manifestation happens when your signal steadies, your nervous system calms, and your choices match who you're becoming, because the field mirrors your being, not your words.
A life can fall apart the way a star collapses, not to die but to ignite into a supernova. What you call ruin may be the flashpoint of a brighter geometry assembling itself in silence. The walls that crack are not the end of the house, but the release of pressure from rooms too small for who you are now. What if the tremor you fear is simply the core of your being reaching critical heat? What if the smoke is not failure, but the nebula that will seed new constellations of meaning? I have seen plans dissolve like ice on a dark sea and later return as rivers, carving a new continent. I have watched friendships drift like orphan satellites, only to reveal the gravity that truly holds. I have felt the calendar empty itself like a night sky, and in the vacancy, unfamiliar stars appeared. This is not a verdict against you. This is a preparation chamber where the old scaffolding is stripped so the span can hold. Chaos is not the opposite of order, but the mother of a better order that remembers how to breathe. Delay is not a locked door, but the corridor where your pulse learns the rhythm of its next life. Loss is not a subtraction, but a rearrangement of mass that frees the light trapped inside it. The identity slipping from your shoulders is a cloak woven for a climate you no longer inhabit. Let it slide. The way planets relinquish unstable orbits to find the path of least resistance. Listen to the creak of your former beliefs as tectonic plates learning a more honest fit. You are not misaligned.
You are in ignition.
The ache you feel is the heat of compression that precedes luminosity. The confusion you fear is the unlearning of maps that kept you walking in safe circles. Stillness is not weakness, but the vacuum that allows the star to gather itself without interruption. If today hurts and you're just trying to breathe again, hit like and subscribe. Let this community remind you you're not alone in the dark. Control once protected you the way a shell protects a soft creature in storm water. Now the shell is heavy, and the tide is turning, and the creature needs to grow legs. Trust is the first limb that forms in the dark. Breath is the second limb that remembers how to move the ocean through your chest. Do not rush this. The universe whispers from the furnace, where your next name is being forged. Do not decorate rubble to look like a home when your true house is rising over the ridge. Ask different questions in the smoke. Ask Ask whether the collapse is pointing to a stronger architecture hidden beneath the ash. Ask whether the people leaving are comets completing an orbit so your sky can quiet. Ask whether the silence is an airlock teaching you how to breathe beyond atmosphere. There are micro stories unfolding in the dust that will one day read like prophecy. A job falls away and the hours widen.